thing about life is people gonna talk about you regardless of what you're doing. So stay focused, stay on your grind, and pay them the mind.
So, Edgar, I don't know if you just want to touch on it a little bit from brand development up until
Sure.
continuous improvement.
For sure. So brand development is what is my
Continuous improvement.
For sure. So brand development is what is my brand? How do I make it available in the marketplace? And how do I operationally support it? So let me kind of give a contemporary example. If I wanted to come out and launch a new burger company to compete with all of the other burger companies, Burger King, McDonald's, Wendy's, etc., that are out there today, for the first time in history, and we have evidence of this, we can go and launch a burger chain without physical locations and turn it into a multi-million-dollar company in a matter of weeks. Yeah. And it's like, and you're like, how the heck is that possible? Well, because you go and develop a brand using the brand elements, and you make it available, and you go and have virtual kitchens, or you go and use shadow kitchens, right? Ghost kitchens to be able to go and make it. Because people no longer need to go to a physical location to get your burger. They want the burger magically showing up at their house from an Uber Eats driver or DoorDash or whoever the heck it is. So that definition, the brand, is there. How do we bring it to market? So, you know, the tangible piece is that the tangible piece is the bag that it shows up in and the burger that you buy, but there's no store.
Yeah.
Right? Is it accessible? Is it available in my area? So it's no longer like I can go to a drive-through of a burger joint, or I can go and sit down in the restaurant. Like COVID has completely kind of changed that, depending on where in the world you are. So that's kind of like an example of brand development. So what's brand strength? Well, kind of like an example of brand development. So what's brand strength? Well, brand strength is a measurement of 5 really critical business factors, but from the lens that your brand perception, right, what you've developed as a brand, may give you a positive, negative, or neutral interpretation of it. And those 5 pieces are legal or regulatory. So, you know, are there a lot of lawsuits in your category? Oh, there's lawsuits all the time. Well, guess what? If you're not responsible for the fact that you might get sued, you need to kind of take that into consideration. You may also go and see that your legal protections are very critical. And in fact, that your customers perpetuate your legal protections. So a great example of it is Louis Vuitton. People are very cognizant of a legally protected Louis Vuitton handbag that's the authentic thing versus a knockoff that you buy for, you know, 1/100th the price. So that's an example of it that's there. The second one is the stakeholder environment. Now this gets really interesting because, well, who are your stakeholders? Well, gosh, just inside your business, you can have executives, management, salespeople, customer-facing staff. But let's take a look at the broader one. You have your customers. Well, you have your existing customers, your past customers, your prospective customers. You have your intermediaries. Maybe you're selling through retailers, or you're selling through third-party agents, or you're selling through sales agents. So that's another stakeholder group that could be there. So being able to understand who are those stakeholder groups that you kind of need to be responsible for. And the next thing is the competitive environment. Now, people go and say, it's like, well, you know, oh, it's very easy for McDonald's versus Wendy's versus Burger King to go and take a look at the competitive environment. And I'm like, you know, we're in this type of software and we don't really have a direct competitor. It's like, yes, you do. You have a competition for the money that people are going to go and spend. If they ain't going to spend it with you, they're going to go and spend it on something. Yeah. And I'll kind of give you an example of at a category level evolution of that effect from a competitive point of view. 20 years ago, people would go and spend thousands of dollars on top of the line televisions, and that would be kind of like their life momentous experience. 10 years ago, people would go and spend $1,000 instead of going and buying now $1,000 television and going and getting themselves a new flashy smartphone. And that would be the momentous event. And today, what people are going and doing is like, I don't want the TV at all. In fact, I'm going to go and, you know, not spend $1,000 on going out to a restaurant, and instead I want to go and get $1,000 super flagship smartphone because that's where my money's going to go. So, you know, if you're in the restaurant business, you actually need to be responsible for the fact that you might lose out on business right around the time that the next $1,300 super smartphone comes out from iPhone or from Samsung or whoever the heck is like the top brand. Like, this is a serious measurable thing in the marketplace.
Yeah.
So the next one is, economical, political, environmental. Now, you might go and take a look. It's like, oh, that doesn't really kind of go and affect us very much. I'm like, oh, yes, it does. Like, I'll give you an example of what we're going and seeing in the coffee industry today. So the coffee space, so your Starbucks, your Dunkin', your Mac Cafes, etc., your corner coffee shops, the strongest growing coffee chains through the pandemic have been the prestige, premium, single, double, triple location chains that are charging like $5.50 for a 12-ounce prestige coffee. Like, that's what's been growing because it became an occasion. So, and they're like, they don't care about the fact that coffee bean prices are going up or down 10 or 15% based on futures. They are kind of able to absorb that because it's such a small share of their price. So that economical, political is there. Or you're in the beer industry. Okay, are you in the craft beer industry? Okay, are you in the premium craft beer industry? Okay, if economic times are good, you're good. But we have 70 years of evidence that if the economy goes down, guess what beers do well? The bucket beers, the cheap beers, right? Like, the 36 bottles for $22 at your local Costco in America. Like, that's the type of beer that does well. So if you're not responsible for it, you're going to miss it. So, and then the last one is the financial. And the financial kind of goes two ways. At the macro, it's kind of like the general financial versus your competition. If you're a large public company, you can go and see what your large public company competitors are doing. But at the micro level, it's the financial wallet, which is what is the total money that is available to buy from your customer base, to compete from your competitors, for you to spend internally. So it kind of brings that complexity in, but it kind of forces you to be responsible for what does it actually need to run a business. And I'll give you kind of that example on the financial side. We've gone and worked with a startup company who was struggling with the fact that they were still private VC funded, and one of their competitors went public. Now, what happens when a company goes public? They raise a lot of money.
Yeah.
So their kind of number one competitor went from going and spending a few $1 million a year on marketing while being VC funded to spending $30 to $40 million a year on marketing while being a public company. So, like, very, very quickly, the wallet of media spending and advertising and attention share completely changed in less than a year. And with the framework, you're able to be responsible for that. So it kind of brings this all together, and it's what you need to be responsible to run a branded business today. There are not a lot of unbranded businesses left. Like, you could be in the commodities business and you still have a brand. You still need to be able to go and convince various geographies and countries to allow you to come in and build a new mine or build a new infrastructure project. If those governments or regions don't like you, guess what? You have a weak brand. Somebody else is going to get it instead. So it's a different mindset. And then the next piece is the brand performance test. It's a different mindset. And then the next piece is the brand performance test, which is kind of like, or the performance test that you have to conduct. So what happens in that one? Well, the test is it's two tests actually at the same time. One is you test what's happening out there, where you go and test the customer base from that legal consideration, given that brand positioning, given how you're going to go and put things out there. It's a combination of market research techniques, but answering the questions that you need for the framework, not a lot of the standard market research questions that have been around since the 70s. It's in addition to those, right? So it doesn't replace market research. It answers a very specific business question using similar techniques as market research. The second test that you conduct is internal, where you actually need to go and find out, hey, this definition of our brand from brand development, this interpretation of our brand strength, given the ecosystem or a category that we're competing in, how well do we align within our own organization around that? Like, can people go and say what our brand stands for, what our top value propositions are, come to an alignment on whether we are legally weaker or stronger than our competition, that we're less or more economically sensitive, and do our internal data sets that we go and gather from our digital tools, our accounting tools, our shipment tools, our employee tools and data sets, do they match up with the marketplace? Because at the end of the brand performance test, in a robust one, you want to be able to go and say, hey, marketplace gives me this range of reasons to buy. And our internal data set, I have a gap in being able to interpret this range of data. I have a gap in being able to interpret this range of data. So it kind of gives you a sense of, oh, wow, this is how well we are set up as a business to actually be able to even respond to market demands. So it kind of forces a sophistication. The beauty of this whole thing is it's scalable. Like, it's not like you have to go and get 1,000 data points on day one as a business. It's kind of pretty straightforward. Like you can get a brand performance test done with about, I think minimum data points is about 25. And that will give you enough of a sense of, do I have a business here, or am I generally doing okay? And then the last thing is the financial brand effect. Generally doing okay. And then the last thing is the financial brand effect. So what happens is you take that customer base and you split it into 4 quadrants, as we've kind of outlined in a lot of our applications of it. And your highest value quadrant is that share of the marketplace that wants to buy what your company is offering, whether they know your company exists or not.
Yes.
This is really, really critical, because then it will tell you, do I have an awareness problem and not a positioning problem? Or they want to buy a whole bunch of stuff and we ain't it. In which case, but they know who we are. In which case, I have a positioning problem and not an awareness problem. And kind of after, in the past 2.5 years, both through our UFT, University of Toronto implementations, plus what we've gone and done ourselves, we have a couple of hundred implementations of this. And what has come out is kind of like call it a responsible norm. And if your highest value quadrant doesn't have at least 10% of the customer base existing in it, you will probably not have a viable business idea. If you have more than 40% in the highest value quadrant, you are too general on your business. The real impetus here to consider is it actually forces you to serve an interested and engaged minority.
Yeah.
Which is completely counter to 60 years of marketing teaching, which is you're not going to be successful until everybody everywhere wants to go and buy what you're going and selling. And yes, that is true in some brands, but that's not where your focus is. It tells you my focus is in my highest value customer tier. It should be in the minority. And if other people buy, great. But that's not who I'm focusing on as a business.
Yeah.
And that's what comes out of it. And the last stage is And that's what comes out of it. And the last stage is continuous improvement, which is, hey, I had my hypothesis when I first wrote down my brand development. I first wrote down my brand strength, and we kind of came to our mutual agreed upon definition as the brand ownership or the leadership of the team or the business. Now we went and tested it, and we're like, okay, so how accurate were we? Did we go and find that there's a segment of the customer base who wants to buy us for reasons that we fulfill that we didn't even plan on fulfilling, but they clearly are buying us for those reasons? So now you're able to go and say, well, do we pivot? Do we serve? Do we listen? Do we engage? Or do we just keep doing what we're going and doing? But now with getting a sense of what the business and economic trade-offs are from following that strategy or not. A lot about this is readily available, right? We've partnered with Bureau Veritas that you can get a certification in this. There's a whole webinar that you can go and see some examples and walkthroughs on that as well. Evangel will have some links for you where you can kind of see other content around this, or go to this community site where we make the basic learning through what I've just walked you through available for free.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Edgar. I'm going to put the links in the description, so that people could find all of that. And I think that was very well laid out. You pretty much covered everything. But if you were to say one of the 5, which is to you, which is the most important of them all, if you were to pick one, what would it be? That's a tough one, I know.
I would say if you become a master at continuous improvement, you will stay ahead of your competitive set in serving your customer base. The rest kind of fall into place. The beauty of the past 2.5 years is seeing individuals and companies go back after their first instance and compare it to, okay, we would change our strategy. Now, how are we going and doing? And really just seeing that rich reward. We have a company that we were working with that implemented this some time ago now. And out of this, they went and discovered that their loyalty program was in use with the minority of their customer base. So we're like, oh, perfect. So you have a segment of your customer base that it uses a loyalty program, and you can actually create your own brand performance model, your brand evaluation framework, just for the people that are loyal.
Yeah.
And what they were able to go and see was, oh, if I look at it from that point of view, so where are those customers? How much do they buy? Do they buy more frequently, less frequently? Do they buy more per transaction? What's motivating them? What's the competitive environment that exists in places where we have more loyalty usage versus not? And all of a sudden, a whole new library of strategic opportunities that were qualified by their own customer base became available. So they no longer were in the boardroom coming up with some really well thought out ideas. They now had a data set that said, hey, here's a set of qualified measures around your customer base and your business. If you had access to these qualified measures and data sets, what new strategies would you build then? And they came out with much more customer-oriented strategies, much more sensitive, much more responsive. So their speed of business and their turnaround to recover their investment improved dramatically. So there became a measurement-enabled strategy organization, as opposed to a strategy, let's execute, find what measures reflect our strategy. You're doing the measurement first, before the strategy. And that is a real departure from what we've gone and done as businesses for the past 100 years.
Yes. Amazing. So thank you so much, Edgar. If you could just tell people where to find you across the web, LinkedIn, social media.
You got it.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So Evangel will kindly put some of these links below. It has been a pleasure to be here. You can find me on Twitter at Edgar Baum or at Inc. to be able to go and find us there. Well, you can also follow our company, Avasta Incorporated, on LinkedIn, where we're coming out with more and more content. You can also go to avasta.co and sign up for our free community where you're able to go and learn and engage with us. We're also on Discord. So all the tools are there for you. So if you are an existing entrepreneur and you want to get that competitive edge and really understanding your customer base, go and use the tools. If you have a great business idea that you've been thinking about for some time and you want to figure out how valid it is, go and use the tools. You are a mature company and you're trying to figure out how do we, deal with the fact that there's all these new companies that are starting up to go and take us out of business, go and use these tools. So all the capabilities there for you to go and use.
Thank you so much, Edgar. Thank you so much. This has been truly insightful. Thank you for coming. And to everybody listening, thank you for tuning in again. Till next time, my name is Evangel. Stay frosty.
Take care, everybody.
All right, yeah.
You know what thing about life is? It's people gonna talk about you, regardless